Halloween night has always been my favorite time of the year. There's something about the smell of autumn air, the crunch of leaves under my shoes, and the flicker of jack-o'-lanterns that makes me feel like a kid again, even now that I'm 17. That night, my friends and I weren't planning to do anything crazy, just some old-fashioned trick-or-treating, one last time before we were officially too old for it. It was me, Josh, and my twin sister, Emily. We'd grown up on the edge of town, where the houses got sparse and the woods crept in close. The plan was simple: hit all the decorated houses, get some candy, then head to the bonfire party at Miller's Field. But of course, things didn't go that way. When we left the house around 7, the sun had already dropped behind the trees, leaving the sky streaked with deep purples and orange embers. Pumpkins glowed on porches, plastic skeletons rattled in the wind, and costumed kids ran laughing through the streets. We were all dressed up, Emily as a witch, Josh as a zombie, and me in the simplest costume I could think of, an old scarecrow mask and tattered flannel. We'd been walking for maybe an hour when we reached the end of Maple Drive, where the cul-de-sac branched off toward Hollow Creek Road. That was when Mrs. Avery called out to us. She lived in the last house on Maple, always sitting on her porch like a watchdog of the neighborhood. Her gray hair was tied in a bun, and she was surrounded by half-carved pumpkins and a bowl of candy she wasn't handing out. When she saw us heading toward the bend that led to Hollow Creek, she stood up, her face tight. "Don't go down that street," she said. We stopped. "Why not?" Emily asked, half laughing. Mrs. Avery's eyes darted toward the dark road. "People disappear there, every year around Halloween. It's cursed." Josh rolled his eyes. "You serious?" "It's just a street." Mrs. Avery shook her head slowly. "Last year, it was a boy named Tyler Finch. Year before that, a little girl. They never found them. Just don't." The way she said it made something cold crawl up my back. But of course, we were teenagers. We laughed it off, thanked her for the warning, and kept walking. As soon as we turned on a Hollow Creek, the air felt different. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. The other streets were alive with kids and parents, but here, nothing. No porch lights, no decorations. Just a stretch of blacktop swallowed by trees. "You guys sure about this?" Emily whispered, clutching her candy bag tighter. Josh grinned. "What, you scared of a dark road? Come on, maybe the rich folks down here give out full-size bars." He started walking faster, and I followed, though something about the shadows made my stomach twist. The streetlights flickered, casting faint orange halos that barely cut through the dark. Most of the houses looked abandoned. No cars in the driveways, windows covered, yards overgrown. About halfway down, we saw one house with a single porch light on. The house looked old, with peeling white paint and a sagging roof. A scarecrow stood by the mailbox, its burlap face twisted into a crude smile. Its head turned slightly toward us as the wind passed through. "Dude," Josh whispered, "that thing just moved." "Wind," I said, though I wasn't sure. The porch light buzzed faintly, and when we got closer, we saw a sign taped to the door. Handwritten in messy black ink. "Take one." A bowl of candy sat beneath it. Josh grabbed a handful, laughing. "Guess we're not the only ones dumb enough to come down here." But then Emily said, "Guys, look." The candy wasn't candy. It was little wrapped bones, tiny, pale things covered in crinkled paper. I picked one up. It was light. Too light. The paper had a faint red stain on it. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. Josh frowned and tossed the one he grabbed into the bushes. "Probably some messed up prank." Then we heard it. A soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from inside the house. At first, I thought maybe it was just a loose shutter or a branch. But the taps got faster, closer, almost like fingernails against glass. Tap, 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 tap. "Let's go," Emily said quickly. We backed away from the porch. The tapping followed us, moving from one window to the next, like something was crawling along the inside of the house, keeping pace with us. When we reached the sidewalk, the front door creaked open. No one stood there. The hallway inside was pitch black. Josh, of course, had to say it. Probably some dude trying to scare us. "Come on, let's just..." He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. In the dark doorway, something moved. A tall, thin shape, hunched over, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It looked almost human, but its limbs were too long. Its fingers scraped the door frame as it leaned out into the light. We ran. None of us said a word. We just bolted down the street, candy bags flapping, shoes slapping against the cracked asphalt. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it. That scraping. That tap, tap, tap sound, like nails dragging on pavement. When we finally reached the corner where Hollow Creek met Maple Drive, we stopped to catch our breath. But when I turned back, the road behind us was empty. No sound, no figure, just silence. We didn't talk much after that. Emily wanted to go home. Josh tried to laugh it off, saying it was just a guy in a costume. But I could see he didn't believe it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shape in the doorway. The way its head tilted like it was studying us. The next morning, I went to find Josh. His mom said he wasn't home. She thought he'd stayed at my place. He hadn't. They found his phone later that week on Hollow Creek Road. Cracked. The screen still recording. When the cops showed my family the video, I didn't want to watch. But I did. It started with Josh laughing, holding his phone out in front of him. "Okay, Hollow Creek Challenge, baby. We're doing it," he said, walking alone down the road. It was dark. Too dark. The only light was from the phone's flashlight. Then he stopped. He turned the camera toward a house, the same one with the scarecrow. Only now, the scarecrow wasn't by the mailbox. It was standing in the middle of the road. Josh whispered something. The scarecrow twitched. Then the video went black, and the last thing you could hear was that same tapping sound, closer this time. Tap, tap, tap. They never found him. For a year after that, no one went near Hollow Creek Road. The police put up a barrier, but it didn't stop the stories. People said they saw figures moving in the trees or heard tapping on their windows at night. One guy swore he found a burlap scrap nailed to his door with a bloody handprint on it. Emily wouldn't talk about it anymore. She changed schools, stopped going out on Halloween. Me, I tried to forget, but this year I started getting messages. They came from an unknown number. "It's Josh." At first, I thought it was a sick joke, but then came a photo, grainy, dark. It was Hollow Creek Road, and in the background, near the end of the street, was a scarecrow. Except this time, it was wearing Josh's clothes. I don't go outside much anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I'll hear faint tapping on the window. I try to ignore it. But last night, I woke up to a sound that froze my blood. A voice, whispering my name. It came from the closet. When I turned on the light, there was something tucked beneath the door. A small, wrapped object. I picked it up, a tiny bone, and written on the paper, in shaky black ink, "Your turn." I used to think people exaggerated when they said they could feel when someone was watching them. That subtle crawl on your neck, that itch between your shoulder blades. Turns out they were right. It started the week I moved into my new apartment. It wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom place above a hardware store on the edge of town. The rent was cheap, the walls were thin, and the pipes clanged like someone beating them with a wrench every night, but I didn't care. I just gotten out of a bad breakup and needed space. Quiet. Somewhere to start over. The apartment faced the street with one big window above the couch. It looked out onto a narrow alley and the back of another old brick building. The landlord, Mr. Carver, told me not to worry about the neighborhood. Mostly night workers and students, he said, but his eyes didn't quite match his tone. On my second night, I noticed the light. It was about 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I was scrolling on my phone when I saw it, a faint glow coming from across the alley, maybe 20 feet away. It looked like a candle, flickering just behind the curtain of an upstairs window in the building opposite mine. At first, I thought it was kind of pretty. There was something nostalgic about seeing a soft, warm light in the middle of the night. But then I realized something odd. The candle, or whatever it was, never moved. The flicker never changed. It wasn't random like firelight. It pulsed, almost like breathing. I laughed it off and went to bed. But when I woke up the next morning, I noticed the curtains across the alley were open. And behind the window, I could have sworn I saw a shape. Just a dark outline. Tall. Still. Watching. The next night, I try not to look. I pull my blinds shut tight and left the lights on. Around midnight, though, I started hearing something. A faint tapping. At first, I thought it was pipes again, but the rhythm was too deliberate. Tap. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window. When I finally looked, The blinds were slightly parted, like someone had pushed them from the outside. I froze. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Then the tapping stopped, and from across the alley, in that same window, I saw it again. The shape. Still, unmoving. I convinced myself it was my imagination. That's what loneliness does, right? It fills silence with ghosts. But by the fourth night, I knew it wasn't just in my head. That night it rained. Heavy, cold rain that hammered the rooftops and soaked the streets. I couldn't sleep again, so I sat up reading. Around 1 a.m., my lights flickered. The whole building groaned. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap. I turned slowly toward the window. The blinds were trembling, like something was brushing against them. When I pulled them aside, my stomach dropped. There was a handprint on the glass, smudged and wet. From outside, I stumbled back, my breath catching. My apartment was on the second floor. There was no fire escape, no ledge, nothing. And yet, there was 5 long fingers pressed into the pane, sliding down slowly, as if someone had just leaned there, watching. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went downstairs and asked Mr. Carver if there had been any break-ins or weird incidents in the area. He just frowned. You've been looking out that window, haven't you? What do you mean? He sighed and rubbed his forehead. Listen, kid, I've had 4 tenants in that unit over the last 2 years. None of them stayed longer than a month. Always the same complaint, somebody watching them from across the alley. But that building's been empty since 2019. Burned out shell, condemned and locked up. No one's supposed to be in there. I didn't know what to say. Then who? He cut me off. Just don't look out after dark. That's my advice. I tried to press him, but he walked away. That night, I taped the blinds shut. I shoved a chair against the window for good measure. I even left the TV on to drown out the quiet. But around 2 a.m., the lights flickered again. The TV screen glitched, static flashing white. And then, through the faint hum of the static, I heard it soft, deliberate, right behind the glass. Tap, tap, tap. The kind of sound fingernails make when they drag along a hard surface. I covered my ears and waited. It went on for minutes. Then silence. I didn't move until morning. When I finally peeled the tape off and pulled the blinds aside, I almost screamed. There were handprints all over the window. Not just one, dozens. Each one elongated, distorted, as if someone had been pressing their hands there over and over, trying to see inside. And across the alley, the window in the opposite building was wide open. For the first time, I saw it clearly. The figure. It was standing right behind the sill, motionless, facing me. It looked like a person, but wrong somehow. Too tall, its shoulders narrow and bent. Its face wasn't a face at all, just darkness. Then, as I stared, it raised one hand and placed it against the glass, mirroring mine. And I swear, even from that distance, I heard it whisper, "I see you." That was the night I called the police. When they arrived, I told them everything. The figure, the handprints, the tapping. 2 officers checked the condemned building across the alley. They came back 15 minutes later, pale as ghosts. "There's nobody there," one said, "but you might want to come see this." I followed them down into the alley. Rainwater pooled around our shoes. They pointed up at the window I'd been seeing all week. It was boarded shut. From inside, no candlelight, no open curtains, no way in or out. One of the cops muttered, "Place burned bad." Half the second floor collapsed. I asked what had happened there. He hesitated, then said quietly, "House fire. Woman and her kid. Trapped upstairs." I didn't ask more. For a few nights, things were quiet. No tapping, no lights, no movement. Then came the photo. It arrived by text from an unknown number. It was my window, taken from outside. I could see myself through the glass, sitting on the couch, staring at my phone. The timestamp said 1:47 a.m. My blood turned to ice. I called the police again, but when they checked my alley security cameras, they said there was no footage at that time. Like nothing happened. After that, it got worse. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear soft breathing near the window. I started sleeping in the bathroom with the light on. One night, I tried recording it, set my phone on the windowsill and hit record. When I played it back the next morning, there was nothing for the first few minutes. Then a faint voice, whispering, "Let me in." I moved out 2 days later. packed my stuff, and left before sunrise. Mr. Carver didn't ask questions, just nodded like he'd expected it. But the thing is, I don't think I left it behind. A week after moving to a new place across town, I noticed something strange. My new window faces a different alley, but when I woke up one night to get a drink, I saw it again. A faint candlelight flicker, same pulsing rhythm. And as I stood there frozen, I realized it wasn't coming from across the alley this time. It was coming from inside the glass, like something was standing behind the reflection, waiting. I reached out, hand trembling, and touched the window. The glass was warm. Then, faintly, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This morning, I found a message written in the condensation on the inside of the window. For words, "Now I see you," and underneath it, a single perfect handprint. When I was 16, my parents sent me to stay with my uncle for the summer. He lived in a small cabin near Cedar Hollow Lake, a few miles outside of town, so small it barely existed on maps. I didn't want to go. There was no Wi-Fi, no friends, no cell signal, but Mom said I needed a break from screens. I remember the drive up there like a bad dream. The trees seemed to close in tighter the farther we went, the sunlight dying between their branches. When we finally reached the cabin, Uncle Ray was waiting on the porch, waving like everything was normal. "Place might be old, but it's got character," he said. He wasn't wrong. The cabin looked like it had been pulled straight out of a ghost story. Creaky wood, fog creeping off the lake, and that smell of damp rot that never really goes away. The only thing separating us from the water was a narrow dirt trail and an old wooden dock that stretched into the fog like a broken finger. I told myself it was just for a few weeks. I could handle boredom, but boredom wasn't the problem. The first night, I woke up to a sound. It was faint, echoing from outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind moving across the lake. But as I listened, I realized it wasn't random. It sounded like voices, muffled, distant, like someone whispering just below the surface of the water. The next morning, I mentioned it to Uncle Ray. He looked up from his coffee. You heard him." He said it so casually, like he'd been waiting for it. "Heard what?" I asked. "The voices," he said, eyes flat. "Best to ignore him. They've been talking for a long time. Don't mean no harm if you leave him be." I laughed nervously. "You're kidding, right?" He didn't smile. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The moon hung low over the lake, its reflection trembling on the water. I sat by the window listening. The whispers came back, soft at first, then clearer. They weren't just sounds, they were words. "Help us." I froze. It was unmistakable. "Please help us." The voice sounded young, desperate, like a child drowning just below the surface. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The night was cold, and the air carried that strange wet smell, half rot, half metallic. I walked to the dock, the boards creaking beneath me. The lake looked like ink, smooth and still. "Hello," I called. No answer, but the water rippled. Then something brushed against the edge of the dock, a faint splash, like fingers breaking the surface. I leaned closer, shining the light down. For a second, I thought I saw a face. Pale, eyes wide, hair floating like seaweed. I stumbled back, so hard I dropped the flashlight into the lake. The beam sank slowly until the water swallowed it whole. The next morning, I told Uncle Ray what I'd seen. He just stared at me for a long time before saying, "You shouldn't go near the lake after dark." "Why? What's down there?" I demanded. He sighed. "Bodies, most likely." "Why didn't say anything?" He continued. "There was an accident back in '84. Bus full of kids from the summer camp. Went off the road into the lake. Water's too deep and murky. They never got everyone out. Locals say sometimes you can still hear them calling." I felt sick. "You think it's them?" "I think the lake remembers," he said quietly. For a few days, I tried to ignore it. I stayed inside after dark, put on headphones, even pushed a dresser against the window. But the voices found a way in. Sometimes I'd wake up with my ears ringing, and faint whispers would fill the room. Wet, gurgling sounds like speech through water. Other times, I'd dream of the lake. Always the same. Cold water closing over my head, pale faces staring up from the depths. Then, on the fifth night, I heard knocking. It was coming from underneath the floorboards. I froze, sitting up in bed. The knocking grew louder, slow and deliberate, like someone trapped beneath the cabin was pounding to get out. I grabbed my flashlight and crept toward the living room. The sound was coming from near the back door. When I got there, it stopped. I opened the door and shined the light outside. Footprints. Wet footprints leading away from the porch toward the lake. Bare feet, and they started from the doorway. The next morning, I asked Uncle Ray if he'd been outside during the night. He looked tired, older somehow. I told you not to listen, he said. Once you hear them, they know you can. What are you talking about? He rubbed his face with both hands. They get in your head. They want out of the water, but they can't cross on their own. They need an invitation. You're saying they're ghosts? He didn't answer. That night, he nailed the front door shut. A few nights later, I woke to a crash. Something had shattered downstairs. I ran out of my room to find Uncle Ray standing in the kitchen, pale as a corpse, staring at the window above the sink. It was cracked, splintered inward like something had hit it from outside. Water pooled on the counter beneath it. Then we heard it again. The voices. Ray opened the door. He started shaking. Don't listen to them, he whispered. They lie. But they kept calling. And soon, I heard something else, my name. Eli. That froze me. How did they know my name? I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he went to the closet and pulled out a heavy chain and padlock. We're sealing it tonight, he said. What? The dock. It's how they reach you. We went out just after sunset. The fog was thick enough to taste. The air buzzed with insects, but beneath that hum, I could still hear it. Those faint, pleading voices rising from the water. Help us. Please, don't let us drown again. I almost dropped the flashlight. Uncle Ray, they sound like kids. That's how they get you, he said, wrapping the chain around the dock post. They'll sound like anything you care about. Anyone. I didn't understand what he meant until I heard the next voice. It was my mother's. Eli, she whispered. Sweetheart, it's Mom. Please help me. My stomach turned. She wasn't here. She was hundreds of miles away. But it sounded exactly like her. Then something broke the surface of the water. A hand. Small, pale, dripping lakeweed. It reached for the dock, fingers twitching like it was trying to climb out. Uncle Ray yelled and grabbed the chain, looping it tighter. The wood creaked, the water surged, and then a second hand shot up, clutching his wrist. He screamed. The thing pulled him halfway over the dock before I could even react. I lunged forward, grabbed his other arm, but the skin of the hand holding him didn't look human anymore. It was bloated, gray, waterlogged. Then something else rose from the lake. Faces, dozens of them, pale and hollow-eyed, mouths open as if still screaming. They were children, but their expressions were twisted in pain. I yanked Ray backward with everything I had. The chain snapped. We fell hard onto the dirt. When I looked up, the faces were gone. The water was still again. Uncle Ray's arm was bleeding where the thing had grabbed him. The skin looked burned. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The next morning, he packed his truck. We're leaving, he said simply. Today, but when he tried to start the engine, it wouldn't turn over. The battery was dead. He cursed under his breath and went inside to grab the jumper cables. That was the last time I saw him. When I went back into the cabin, he was gone. The back door stood open, and leading down to the dock were wet footprints. I called for him until my throat hurt. No answer. Then I saw it, something floating near the center of the lake. At first, I thought it was a log, but as I stared, it rolled slightly, and I saw a pale arm. I screamed for help, but there was no one around for miles. By the time I ran to the shore, the arm had vanished beneath the water. All that was left was his hat, drifting near the dock. I called the police, of course. They dragged the lake for 3 days. They never found a body. I stayed with the sheriff while they searched. He told me locals had a name for that place, Whispering Water. He said every few years, someone disappears there, usually a fisherman or a camper who wandered out at night, always near the same spot. When I asked if they'd ever found any of the missing kids from the bus, he said quietly, no. Lake's too deep. It just keeps what it wants. I don't talk about it much. Most people think I'm making it up, but sometimes late at night, I'll fill a glass of water and leave it by my window, just to test myself. And if I sit there long enough, in the dark, I can hear it faintly. The sound of something moving beneath the surface. Whispering, calling my name. Last night, it was louder than usual. I poured the water out, but as it hit the sink, I swear I heard a voice rise from the drain. Let him join us. And for a split second, before the water vanished, I saw my uncle's reflection smiling up at me.